this quickly, open up Google, then just type in JetBrains, as you can see on the screen. Give it a second or so, and then once you've done that, all you need to do is just click on the website, just wait for that to load. When you go to the menus, what you want to do is you want to look for IntelliJ IDEA as part of the developer tools options that you've got available there, and then just click on that. And then on the right hand side, you'll have an option to download. So just click on that as well, and you'll get an option to download Ultimate. So don't do that. Just scroll down, and then click on the download option for the community edition, as that's completely free to use, as I've just highlighted there. So go ahead, click on that, download it, and then just follow the instructions and get that all set up. So I'll let you get that set up, and then we'll move on to the next part. Okay, so once you've launched IntelliJ, what you want to do is you want to go ahead and click on New Project, just as you see on my screen. Click on that button. Here you'll have a few options. So the name of your project, so you can enter whatever you want, like Java Basics, like I have, and then just put the location of where you want to save that project folder. So just create one locally, and then create it there. You can choose your language and your build system. We'll cover that later. It's a little bit more complicated. But what you can now select is your JDK. So if you've got that downloaded, if not, don't worry. Just click on the Add JDK and then click on Download. So you can download Java directly to your laptop using this option. And I would recommend using Eclipse Temurin, the same one that I have, but I'm using version 17 and not 21. So it doesn't really make a difference for this, but if you can, try and use the latest version that they have in support. So that's fine. Everything else is okay. They'll add some sample code if you really want it, and there's some advanced settings. And again, we can cover that at a different day. So just click on that and just wait for it to be created. And as you can see, it's loading now. I'm using a bit of an older laptop actually at the moment, so it's not the fastest in the world, but we finally got it started. We've got a main file now. But what we'll do is we will be creating a new class. So what you want to do here is you just want to right click and then click on new and then Java class. And here just type in hello and just leave a class as the selected option. In here you'll have, by default, IntelliJ will create a public class hello based on the name of the class that you're creating. What you want to do is just add a function for main here. So you need a main function to run your code, and then what you want to do inside here is you want to do system.out.println, so that means print line, and then in quotes you can put hello world just like you would in any other language. And what we'll go ahead and do is we'll just run this file. At the top you'll see a green button, which I'm just going to click on now, and just wait for that to build and execute, and it should hopefully give you some output. So we'll let that run for a couple of seconds as it builds. Again, it's a bit on the slow side, but we move. We'll let that go ahead. You can see here that it says that the package system does not exist, so we clearly made a mistake here, and it's just a bit of a typo. So we'll quickly just change that small s into a larger S, and you see on the IntelliSense we'll get system, so we'll put that in correctly, and remove the extra bits that have been caught there, and then we'll rerun the file. We'll let it build again, and hopefully it should give us our expected output. So again, it's running right now, and just be a little bit patient if it's your first time. And again, it's passing all the resources. And hooray! Now we can see that in our output in our terminal, we've got hello world. So you've officially created your first Java application, and really only took a couple of minutes. So on to the next episode. Alright, good morning everyone, and welcome to another episode of Coffee and Code. Just waiting for my coffee to brew, but what we'll do now is quickly create another class. We'll be covering variables today. So we're creating a quick class called variable example, and as you know, it'll create a public class for us with the exact name of the file that we've just created. So now all you need to do is write the main function again, just like we did last time. And again, I prepared all of that for you today. And then we'll be covering your variables and your primitive data types as well in Java. So what we can see here is multiple variables here. So the first thing that we'll start with is the int age that we've got on the screen here. So int is your data type. It is also known as an integer. So you would have like a specific number like we have here on the screen, so 25, and that's how you define it, or 15 or whatever, or 20. That would be an integer. And now we'll look at a double. So a double is where you'd have a number that has decimal points. So in this case, we have 5.9. And a char, you can probably guess, is also known as character. So it means that, in a particular string, you might have like a letter, and a letter would be known as a character. And again here, what we'll showcase here is a string for you. So a string is a bunch of characters put together. You can have a mix of numbers and also characters as part of a string as well. But of course, you can't have characters inside of an integer or a double. So that's really important to know. What we will do, however, is we've written a quick system out print line just to print all of those values, just so you can see. As you can see in that function that we're calling here, we're just concatenating everything so we can show you what each variable means. But this is a quick highlight of variables inside of Java, just so you understand. And again, things can get a little bit more complex, but these are the main ones that you need to know for now. But yeah, thank you for joining today, and I'll come back tomorrow for another episode. Create a class called operators example. So right click, create class, and here we go. We've got your operators example launched. We'll write our main method as well, as usual, and I prepared a few of the use cases for operators inside of Java. So what we'll do now is we'll declare some variables. So we've got num1 and num2 that we've declared, and what we'll do now is we'll run through a couple of the operators that you can use. The first one is the plus sign operator. So as you guessed, you can add two integers together, or you can concatenate two strings together. And then moving on, you can look at the difference. So here, what you'd do is you'd use the minus operator. So basically the minus sign, you can take a integer away from another integer, and so on and so forth. And then you have, moving on from that, the product. So if you want to get the sum of something and you want to times two numbers together, then use the star sign, which is the product. And then what will happen after that is if you want to get the quotient, which is where you'd use the divide sign, where you divide one number by another. So these are kind of like basic things that you learn sort of in maths, but you can also utilize in vast majority of languages, and specifically here within Java. And you notice that these are quite basic, but will become very, very important when you are doing particular calculations as well, as part of your different projects that you're working on. And trust me, there's a lot of that to come. But yeah, as usual, we've written a quick system out print line just to show you the various different values that we're populating. That's a quick summary. Thank you for joining today's episode, and tune in tomorrow for another one. We are on episode 4, and we're looking at if statements. So I've obviously done some preparation for today, and I've written a snippet of code just to walk through control flow, looking at if statements. So as usual, create your main function, and then we'll move on. Meanwhile, I'll get everything set up so you can just see it on the screen. just bear with me. So first I'll just create a quick integer, and I'll set the age as 25. And then what I'm doing now is I'll use the keyword if. So, like if you are going to ask someone a question, that if you're X number of years old, then we'll let you into the club, for example. So now we're just going to check that our variable age is greater than 18. And then we're using the same function that we did before. So system.out.println, which will just print something to the console, so that we can see that there. And so if the age is greater than 18, we will print out to the console that, you can vote, right? So currently it's at 25, so we'd expect it to print out the correct value and say that you can vote. And in our else condition, which is our fallback, right? So if the first condition fails, which is that the age is greater than 18, if it turns out that it's 17, for example, the age, then it'll print out, no voting for you, basically. So what we'll do is quickly run this file, give it a couple of seconds as well. This laptop is a bit old. What it's printed out is what we expected. You can vote. Excellent, right? Because the age is 25 and we're comparing it and making sure that it's greater than 18. So it makes sense, right? The other thing you can do with if statements is you can do an else if. And an else if, you can include brackets to include another condition, to say that, if this also happens, so if the first one fails, then it goes to the next one, then it goes to the next one, then it goes to the next one, and it kind of works in a similar sort of fashion. So now we're going to put the specific condition that the age is less than 18. You don't really need to do this, you can just use an else, but I just want to show you that you can also put other conditions in, if you really wanted to. And all it'll print out now is saying that you're not 18 yet, basically. Because we've updated the age to 16 now as the integer, it will now print out you're not 18 yet, hence not able to vote in this situation. So that's a quick overview of if statements and control flow. Thanks for joining today's episode, and tune in for episode 5 tomorrow. And welcome to episode 5 of loops in Java and of coffee and code. So what we'll do is we'll quickly create a new class called loop example. And as always, we'll have our public class created here. Okay, so I've done some prep before today to just generate some code. So first of all, let's just get rid of the class that's been created by default. All right, so the boilerplate is now gone, and we'll start with looking at while loops. So first you need to understand what while a loop might do. So as you can see here, let's just walk out with this example, right? So we've got a variable here called count, and it's initialized as 1. And then what we are checking here inside this while loop, that while the count is less than or equal to 5, and we want to print out the count. And then of course we'll also increment that number. So it will first initiate this loop, and then, for example, here it'll print out the count as 1, and then it will add 1 to the count, so make it 2, and then it'll keep going again and again and again until it reaches 5, and then it'll increment it to 6, and then it will stop because it would have failed. It would not be less than 5 anymore. So that is how you would use a while loop. And you also have do while loops as well. We'll probably cover that in a different episode. But we can also look at for loops as well. So for loops are really good if you want to iterate through an array or a list of items. So here, for example, how you'd conduct a for loop is you'd initiate a first variable. So it could be that you want to iterate through a list while checking the length of that list.
So what you do is you can initiate like I as 1 or I as 0 to be the first index in the list. And then as long as, I is less than the length of that array, for example, then you want to keep iterating through and printing out, each element in that array as an example. But here it's kind of the same thing that we're doing in the while loop. We'll still be looking to iterate on each iteration, and then we'll also be printing out, what iteration number it is, but it'll be for, based on this variable that you define, and also what your condition is, like what I needs to be less than. So I hope that makes sense. And, using these in more complex scenarios will be beneficial to get practicing. And hopefully, so today we're going to be looking at functions. So as usual, go ahead and create a class and we'll create a new class, obviously, and then we can start off by learning a little bit about how to use functions. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to declare a new function, not inside of our main function this time, just outside. So you can see a new one. So we're going to type in static void, and the name of the function is going to be greeting. As you can see in brackets, I've denoted string and then name. So basically what will happen here is that I'm going to take an input that is of type string, and that input is going to be called name. And the reason we give our inputs like variable type names is that so that we can then use them later on if we want to like manipulate that data. But what we'll do is also do a quick system.out.println. We're just going to say hello to that name. So basically we're going to type in hello as we can see on the string on the screen. Concatenate that to our input, which is name, as we've just discussed. And then we're just going to add a little exclamation mark at the bottom. So if we go back to our main function, what we can do is we can call that. And so to call a function inside of Java, you type in that function name. So greeting in this case, open up your brackets, and then inside of there, because we're taking string as an input, we'll also pass another string in. Great thing about IntelliJ is that it will give you like what are the expected inputs for this particular function. So we can see name here, and we just passed in James, and we'll let it run for a couple of seconds, wait for it to build. And then once that's done, we can have a look at what the output is. So we can see now in our console, we've got hello and James, which is the name that we put in as part of that function. Good thing about functions is that we can reuse that bit of code. Don't have to keep writing system.out.println 10, 15, 20 times. Right? Why would we want to do that when we can write a simple function, pick one line of code, and we can keep reusing that again and again and again and again. And say, for example, you have users logging in. You could just write a function to greet the users like this one, and it would greet them on the screen. So you don't have to keep, trying transforming and taking in the input again and then, printing that to the screen or passing it to the API to print on the screen. But instead, you can just use that one simple function and keep reusing. And that's the benefit of doing that. So what I'll suggest to everyone is do some practice on functions. It's going to be the bread and butter of all of your projects. And most importantly, keep trying to reuse, just do simple stuff at the start, and then you'll learn the rest later. Thanks so much for joining this episode, and tune in for the next one. Of Coffee and Code. Today we'll be looking at arrays. So go ahead and do the usual. Create a class. Make sure you're using IntelliJ so you can follow along exactly as I'm doing. And we'll get started. So I've already declared my main function as usual. And we'll go ahead and initialize an array. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at initializing an array of integers. So first, what we're going to do is we're just going to write int. So that's just to declare that whatever we're going to declare here, the variable is going to be an integer or integers in this case. And then we'll pass in the square brackets. So that's just to say that, hey, Java, I'm going to be using an array. And then we'll give the name of that variable. So in this case, numbers. And then in those things that I like to call curly braces, we'll go ahead and put in our numbers. So for example, 1 and then a comma and then 2 and a comma and 6 and so on and so forth. You can see it on the screen anyway. And then now that we've done that, we have created our first array. You're thinking like, what is the point in us actually doing this? So let's quickly have a look and see how we can actually use this in particular. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at how we can loop through this and then print it out into the console. So each and every single one, we want to look at that. All right, but first we're going to discuss how would you access a particular element in the array. So how does it start? Right, so in this case, an array will start from an index of 0 to the first element in the array. So here 1, the index of that, so its position is going to be 0. So we're going to do a quick system and out.println, and we're just going to say that the first element of this array and then print that out. So if you wanted to access the first element, you give the name of the array, right? So in this case, it's numbers that we've declared. And in those square brackets that you can see that I'm typing now, we can just put 0, and that will give us the first element of the array. And as you can see in the console, we've got our first element in the array, and that prints out the number 1. So we've officially accessed number 1. So that's probably one of the most important things. So 1, you can access individual elements inside of an array. But what we'll also look at is how we can iterate through an array. So what the hell is like iterating through an array, right? You can use loops to go through each individual element, and you can mutate that, or in this example, we'll just print it. We're going to use a simple for loop, right? So how we do that is type the keyword for, as you can see on the screen. Then we'll say that we want to declare the variable that we'll be using. So int here, and then we'll type in num, and type the colon, and then numbers, which is our array, and then open those curly brackets, and then inside of there, we'll do system.out.println, and then we'll say number, give it a colon in a string, and then we'll use a plus sign to concatenate. Remember, you can concatenate, string to a string, and number to a string, for example. And then we'll do just num. So num is the first variable that we've given, right? So that's for each element, basically. And now what we'll do is we'll go ahead and run and build this. And you can see in the console now, it's printed out every single number. It's gone through the entire list and got number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, for example, right? And you can see all the way up to that number 33, which is our last element in the array. So you can already see how powerful arrays are and how easy it is just to do these kind of basic things. So get practicing, try and use arrays a lot more, try and use loops and everything that we've learned so far, and it will go a long way, particularly when you're working on your own projects. But thanks for tuning in, and tune in for the next one.